Welcome to this Killik Explains finance video. This week I'm going to try and demonstrate why investors' brains, including mine sometimes, can't cope with one of the most important concepts in finance, compound growth, and why that's a bit of a problem. So, here we go. The background is what? Now, the ability to make compound returns is one of the only free lunches in the world, and certainly in investing. It's the ability to earn interest on interest. It's the idea that you invest £100 to earn 5%, let's say. At the end of a year, you've got £105. You invest all of that again, and you could get 5% growth, not guaranteed, on £105, and so on. You are literally building up your returns. Now that sounds simple enough, and the interest rate affects the amount you earn over time, but people do struggle with how powerful this can be. I'll use an extreme example to make my point. So, although it's one of the oldest and one of the most powerful forces in finance, it's actually one of the hardest to grasp. Let me explain why and then what we're going to try and do about it. Okay, the linear brain problem summarizes why. As humans, we don't think in what could best be described as a compound way, if you like. We are good at linear stuff, we're not so good at other stuff. So what do I mean by that? So most of us have no problem thinking in a linear fashion. All right, now I'm going to patronize you slightly here. What's 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4? That's a linear example, and the answer is 16. That's not going to win you any prizes, certainly watching this video, but that's an example of a simple linear problem. Now, if I were to say to you, what is 4 times 4 times 4 times 4? There'll be some people out there who can do it in their heads, and that's great, but quite a few people, even though I've only changed a small part of the equation, will be thinking, crikey, that's actually quite a lot tougher. And the answer is 256. Now, if you got that, fantastic, but you see the point. And if I was to pick bigger numbers, 6 times 6 times 6 times 6, it gets harder still. Now, double trouble is basically what? It's the idea that over time we struggle to compound. And I'm going to use a very simple rate, double, 100% to illustrate the point, if you like. Now, why? Well, on a capital-only basis, the S&P 500 has roughly, depending on where you start and finish the measurement, doubled your money over the last decade. Now, realistically, it's not going to do that every decade, but there's a good starting point. So, doubling also underpins the rule of 72. That's the little mathematical thing you might have done at school that says you can use it to work out how long it'll take to double your money by taking the growth rate you're thinking of, 4%, and dividing 72 by it. So it underpins that idea, and it does seem pretty simple. The idea of doubling your money, you're not guaranteed to do that, of course, in financial markets, but it's a nice simple concept until you start to do a lot of it. And then our ability to absorb the information starts to go AWOL. So, some examples coming up. And there are hundreds of these, but here are just 2 or 3. The folded paper effect, as it's called. So just to prove my point, if you were to take a piece of paper, and this is not my original example, it features in 2 or 3 books that have been published recently, fold it in half, and then fold it in half again. So take a piece of paper, fold it in half, that's going to double the width, fold it in half again, keep doing that. Okay, how high will it be once you've folded it 50 times? Because it's going to keep getting wider, and a piece of paper starts at something like 0.004 inches. It starts pretty thin, but basically every time you fold it over, you're going to be increasing the width. So if you were to stack it up, what would you have? And most people will not get to around 64 million miles worth of paper, all right, which is over half the distance of the Earth to the Sun, and basically ends up as a meaningless result for most people. So you know the answer is going to be big, but not many people realise quite how big it's going to be. And that is the power of compounding. Now I'll give you another doubling example. So the chessboard challenge is quite an interesting one. Here you take a 64 square chessboard, fairly straightforward idea, put a grain of rice on square 1, 2 on square 2, double again, so you go 4 on square 3, keep doubling up until you get to the top corner on the opposite side, the 64th corner if you like. How many grains of rice will be on square 64? The answer is actually more rice than has ever been cultivated by most estimates. It'll weigh more than all the world's gold if you could assemble that on a chessboard square. And again, it's a largely meaningless result, but it does give you an indication of quite how powerful, especially at doubling, compounding can be. Now, some people say, well, doubling's unrealistic, so let's cut that a bit. Let's go down to, say, 50%, right? Still punchy. Well, let's look at the domino effect. And then I think 3 examples, you'll probably get the idea. So this one says, take a standard domino piece, about so high. All right, make the next one, so put it on the ground, make the next one 50% taller, and the next one 50% taller than the last one, and the next one 50% taller than the one that came before it, and keep going. By the time you get to domino 32, the height of the domino you need to put down will be above the Empire State Building. Fairly unbelievable stuff. Now, closer to home. We're not talking normally about doubling your money in stock market returns. That would be a pretty punchy assumption over a short period, but you can see the point. So close to home, how do we use this? Well, we use it like this. Say someone is aiming to build £1 million pension fund, let's say over a 40-year career. A lot of people say to me, that's crazy. £1 million can't be done. I don't have to worry about sums that big. But actually it can be done. Now, you need to make an assumption about the growth rate you'll achieve. This is not guaranteed. Have to make that. That one is just purely illustrative. But over the last 2 or 3 years, some investors have made 20 or 30% out of the FTSE 100. That's unusual, I stress, but it shows that over the long term there are some good returns out there. Now, if you pick a growth rate, it'll tell you roughly, before costs and tax, what you need to save per month. At just 2%, fairly conservative, £1,300 per month. At 5%, £650 per month, and were you to achieve 8%, some would say a fairly punchy assumption, but in the context of the last few years, not outrageous if you're prepared to take a bit of risk, £350 per month. Now suddenly that sounds like a bit more of a manageable sum if your target is £1 million. And how do you do that? Off £350 a month, build a £1 million fund, and the answer is through the power of compounding. So, to finish off, what are the rules about achieving reasonable rates of compound growth? Start as early as possible. It's an old cliche, but the earlier you start, the longer you've got to build those grains of rice up, as it were. Keep at it. Don't stop. All right, keep at it. Through thick and thin. Dips in the market's doing well, keep at it. Pound cost average your way through, and take some risk, especially in the early years. Don't take a crazy amount of risk. Moderate it as you reach the end of the savings period, but do be prepared to take some risk. If you're investing for a child, for example, as I've been doing recently, my daughter, if you can't take risk at 8, when can you, as I put it? Okay, editor at killik.com if you'd like any more examples. I'm sure 3 was probably enough. And to see more videos around this theme of compound growth, how it works and how you can benefit from it, killik.com/learn. And down here, you'll find the investing principles and the shares tabs.